Today, are you living in a high-rise and are you worried? Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to our latest post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Given the recent news about the Opal Tower, I've received a whole bunch of questions from other people living in other high-rise buildings that have been developed quite recently, and some of them are expressing concerns. So I thought I'd go to our property insider Edwin Almeida and ask him specifically what should they do. So, I couldn't give them an answer, but what's your perspective in terms of how isolated the Opal Tower thing is? And I know you've said previously that there are probably issues elsewhere. So should people in other properties, other high-rise buildings, relatively new ones, be concerned?
I think so. I think we've got to be sober as to how we approach all this, and as I've said in many of my social media platforms, there are a lot of answers there are a lot of questions to be asked of the regulators from all the different bodies as to why certain things were allowed to be as high, as big, and as densely populated as what they are. The interesting thing is, Martin, with all the hype that we've had over the years with high rise and development and the property market, a lot of people have dropped the ball. And let's bring it closer to home. Even investors have dropped the ball as well. They've either left it up to the agents or the property managers to look at the strata reports, to look at everything, and for them it's happy-go-lucky. Look, it's a big asset. It's one of your biggest investments that you will ever make. Second perhaps to the principal place of residence, or if it is your principal place of residence, you've got to get involved. You've got to get involved with the owners' corporation and find out what the hell is going on. You've got to start. People have got to start sobering up. Get off the Kool-Aid of the being on, or the vino, or whatever they've been drinking. Get off it, and sober up, and start finding out what's going on with your owners' corporation. It's okay. Yeah, you can blame shift, but at the end of the day, you're there now. You are there. I'm not saying to take the reins over the whole committee, but there is a committee. There is a corporation. There is a body. Get involved. Read back on the history. Look back at the historical references, historical archives in your local government area for that particular land that the building was built on. That's what we do. As when somebody commissions me or commissions my team to go out and look for a property for them to purchase, we look at the historical data as well. The archives in the local councils, in order to see what the block was built on. And again, I go back to the issue of, my God, it's the chickens have come home to roost, because now we are seeing the issues. As I've said all along, we shouldn't be digging lower than 1.5, 2 basements maximum. But we're going, Martin, we're not going 6 meters into the ground anymore. 6 or 7 meters into the ground. We're going 25, 30, 40 meters into the ground. We're going to uncover some, prehistoric skeletons and whatnot, along the way, with everything else that were buried. As I said all along, there've been reports from in that Homebush Bay, the Olympic Park precinct. In a previous video before all this happened, I said that if people want to get an idea of what that area looked like before it was the Olympic site or the Olympic Village, and before from what it was before, just go and watch the Beyond Thunderdome, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, because that's where it was shot. That were the abattoirs and so much, and there were reports after reports that have been hidden and that have been buried for many years. But now it's all coming home to roost. But again, as I say, it's not just that precinct. There are a lot of other areas. And again, as I said before, also it's not necessarily need causeways, need waterways. It's also inland. You must look at the historical. Get an engineer. Get an engineer to come in and give a comprehensive report of your building. That's what the committee's for. That's what the strata manager's for. But as I said, we've got to be responsible as well for our investment. Now you made that choice. Now the best thing you can do is start finding out and reading up on the strata reports for however long the building has been erected for, and start finding out and educate yourself what was fixed, what wasn't fixed, what's yet to be fixed, and so forth. And again, these are the things that you need to look at. And let's face it, how many solicitors or conveyancers, when you go and get a conveyance and you're buying a property, how many of them would read through a report that's about that thick? Very few.
But the point you're making is a good one, because there will be a strata management company or an entity that is effectively the corporate body for that particular building, right? And that does actually have responsibility for maintenance, and it does therefore keep records, and presumably it runs meetings from time to time and communicates on the various things that are actually in train and are being planned, and presumably are also aware of the defects that may or may not exist in the property.
Well, look, it's a 50-50, to be honest with you, Martin, because we don't have one property, one strata manager looking after just the one block. They're stretched.
Right.
You got to ask how many blocks is your strata manager looking after? Not the strata management company, but your individual strata manager.
Yep.
That is straight in all the reporting that they have to do. So you have to ask yourself the question: how much are they really doing to look after your well-being? And if you're relying on the strata manager to do all that for you, well, you've got rocks in your head. Like I said, you need to. That's the whole purpose of the owners' corporation. That's the whole purpose of the committee, is to make sure that things get done. And often the case. Look, I have a lot of people that contact me as well and ask me, what they can do because they've contacted the strata manager. They haven't heard from them. They haven't seen them. They haven't done the regular inspections. There've been apartment blocks where one of the lifts hasn't worked for months and so forth. And there's this and there's that. We've expected the management companies to do a lot of our work, and yet over the years we've also compressed or decreased the payment structure. So the old saying, Martin, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And in this case, unfortunately, it's no different. In some cases, you can pay a fortune and you still get gorillas. So it's just one of those. They're overworked. Because we go back to what I've been discussing with yourself and your followers, and that is that the property management companies, strata management companies, real estate offices have replaced the good and seasoned agents with newbies that wouldn't know the difference between a roof tile and a floor tile if it smacked them in the head.
So let me just be clear. You've got the strata manager and you've got the body corporate or the corporate manager, right? So how do those two things interact? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, the owners corporation or the committee is made up of people, owners, and particularly owners that generally live in the block of units, because not a lot of the owners live there.
Yep.
So that's made up. That's the committee. And the strata manager manages the financial side of things, the organizes the inspections, or does all that, or in essence does the work that the committee tells them to do, or guides them in how to manage the building. They've got certain obligations themselves that they know they've got to do, but the committee is there to agree or disagree on what gets or what doesn't get done. And that's made up of owners. It's not just one; it's multiple owners. So it's a committee that drives that whole thing. And then they delegate all the work and statutory as well as general maintenance and the whole bit. They delegate that for the strata manager to look after. Hence the reason why when you look at your strata levies, that you pay quarterly, they should be itemised as to what goes to cleaning, what goes to insurance, the sinking fund, and then in that, amongst all that, is the fee that the strata management company gets paid to manage it all. To have all the financials, because they take care of obviously the strata levies, issuing the notices, and like a property management company, except managing a block. So they organise any of the rectification work, tradespeople, the whole bit. So you're effectively managing all the common areas on behalf of all the owners. So
okay, but it's the owners, ultimately the collective body of owners, who are basically calling the shots. Is that right?
Yeah, well, they should be.
Right.
They should be calling the shots, but often the case they don't even know what they're doing. But they should be. They should be calling the shots, and that's what I'm saying. You've got to get involved. There isn't enough. There isn't enough out there in terms of learning or teaching people how to be in those committees, or how to act, or how to There are some people that have been obviously living in medium density sites or addresses, and they know the ins and outs because of they've been at it for many years. But often the case, Martin, and this is the problem that we've addressed before, is that most of these newer buildings, most of the owners are not even in Australia. And that's where we're going to have that is one stick of gelignite that it's yet to go off.
Right, because if you're out of the country, you can't obviously be involved in the decisions, and making decisions is then difficult and hard. I can see a whole level of complexity that emerges from that.
Oh, not only that, but then the apartments aren't tenanted. There's rectification work, then the special levies, then the strata managers don't know where they live, where they are, and then they've got then there's going to be all sorts. Like I said, it's going to be a field day for lawyers. Their 7 years of plenty is coming up.
So if you were thinking of buying a new unit in a new property, right? What are the top 3 or 4 questions that you would want to get your lawyer or your solicitor to ask before you actually went and bought it?
They're just going to go by the documents that are presented to them in the form of the contract. They're going to be relying on, again, other professionals. They're going to be relying on the honesty and reliability, credibility of other professionals that have allegedly certified certain work, and therefore there's an occupation certificate. I think what you've got to do is you've got to ask the marketing agent for historical references on the developer. You can ask the marketing agent for historical references on the builder, and by them giving you the historical references on the developer and the builder, then you can go and see what other developments and what are the buildings they've built, and see if they've stood the test of time. Then the next thing you should be doing is you should be going again to asking the agent, the marketing agent, for historical background on the land envelope. What was on here before it was demolished? What type of warehouse, factory, what type of buildings were here? And you want to find that out. If they don't know, well, most won't know. Then you obviously you go to the council and do your research. You go into the council and do your research there. So these are all the intricate things that you can imagine people haven't done, and there'd be 0.001% that may have.
And I guess there would be some sort of corporate body constitution or some governance document. Would that be part of the deeds?
Well, yeah. Look, there's a what's what do you call it? A draft strata that's included in the contract of sale. But that the owner's corporation or the strata isn't registered until a certain percentage of the new apartments actually settle. And once they settle, then once a certain percentage settle, then obviously you can formally register the strata, and then you move into the next phase until such time the developer's in control, or the owner of the build, if it's a builder developer or developer, they're in control until that percentage is settled, and then they have to form an owners corporation, because it's no longer up to it's no longer up to one person to dictate what happens.
Right. But then again, it goes back to the point. It's worth understanding the owner corporation. How does it work? When does it meet? What decisions does it take? All those sorts of things. And some of that may be defined in some of the documentation. But once you're in the property and you're an owner, get involved is what you're saying, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah.
Definitely. Especially if you're going to live there, you'd be crazy not to.
Yep.
But unfortunately, like I said, we've dropped the ball, and we're under this belief that the property managers read all the reports, that the stratum, that everybody's doing all the reporting, and they're reporting to us. Let's break it down, Martin. And I'm not saying this because I'm sticking up for my industry now, but these are the simple facts. Across the board, the fee that you are paying your property manager to manage, let's say, one of these units in any one of these high-rise developments, on average across Sydney, the fee is about $22 a week. That's what you're paying a person to manage your unit, to do all the ins and outs. So, not a lot of money when you think about it. And guess what? You're not their only client. So they're typically a property manager, a very good property manager with a good property officer behind them, would manage 180 properties. And yet, a number of them are even pushed now to manage 200, 220, and you could say with half an assistant. In other words, only an assistant that works either part-time or is working across two property managers. That's the pressure that's on the industry, because collectively we are also part of the SME body that I keep being harping about, that many property analysts and economists other than yourself and people like myself have been talking about, is that you can talk about what the banks are doing to with the buyers, with the investors and everything else, but hey, there's a lot of pressure on the SMEs, and they cannot get refinanced, and guess what? They're going to start offloading their investments. When they start offloading their investments, it's to safeguard their jobs, the businesses, which in turn is safeguarding the principal place of residence. Like I said, in many posts in the past, the general trend: people get rid of their toys, the speedboats, the cars, the motorbikes, the this and that. Then they start getting rid of the holiday homes.
Effectively, what you're saying is that you've got professionals trying to do a good job, but essentially they are spread very thin, and therefore there is a limit to their capacity and capability to cover all the issues. And the assumption that often owners make are that magically all of the stuff is going to get fixed behind the scenes.
That's right, and
it just doesn't happen.
It's not. It doesn't happen, and it's not happening, particularly in the present time.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So the other angle on the Opal thing is what's happening with regard to valuations. And I suppose you can look at it specifically relating to the Opal Tower. But I guess my question is, are we seeing any knock-on effects to other high-rise developments of similar ilk? Or is it too soon to say yet as to what's really happening with the valuations?
No, I think a lot of the values, most of the values are very smart. And they know, and the industry knows. Look, we've known in the industry the many deficiencies in the high-rise developments for many years. put out a report in 2014, early 2015 as to the issues that we're gonna have. Even from back then, even 2-3 years prior to that, I've been talking to valuers with respect to the high rise and the maintenance, and we've all and the consensus has always been in these high rise developments that how underestimated or understated the strata levies have been in the proposed marketing campaigns, where where they themselves have seen, and myself, because we managed a number of apartments in a number of high-rise developments across Sydney, and that is they go from $750 per quarter. For the first year, because obviously, as I said, the developer or the builder still holds a lot of properties in there under the various entities, and then once they've offloaded all the properties, then all of a sudden you go to $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, $3,500 per quarter, and these fees, these outgoings, have played a big role in forming in the valuation process, in order to put the reports together for the banks, for obvious lending purposes. So in this case, if people are on a belief that the values haven't already started addressing this, well, again, they've got rocks in their head. They're living in a different world than what I live in. I dare say that, as I said to you, Martin, is before, when the first rumblings of it happening, it was in my books, you could easily take off 20-30% of the adjoining buildings, fundamentally in that precinct. Well, then obviously a lot of questions have risen. A lot of reports now have come out in the mainstream with various sites across Sydney, across New South Wales, even across Australia, that have had many deficiencies. Wait until they start talking about mold issues, and wait until they start talking about all the prefabricated materials that they're brought in from overseas. Then we're going to really get serious about it. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
But the implication of that is quite serious for banks, isn't it? Because if they've effectively written mortgages against properties on a valuation that was done, before all of this new stuff has come out, they could well be sitting on a property that is worth a lot less than the paper value that's in the books.
Oh yeah, that can write off, as I said, 20-30% of the values across that precinct right now.
Yeah.
And it's yet to this whole fiasco with Opal Tower is yet to play out. I haven't. My position still stands. I haven't moved my position. I will see that tower get demolished.
Right, but I guess the point there is that banks should be on notice now that they should perhaps be reviewing the valuations that they got on a range of properties over the last few years, and effectively doing some review to see whether in fact the security is still safe and secure, because it could well be that they are sitting on a powder keg there as well.
Well, that's a $64 million question, isn't it? Do they really want to open that can of worms?
Well, no, the answer is they don't, just that they don't want to revalue the value of property at the moment, despite the fact it's sliding, right? So they're still using the initial valuations that were taken when the security was originally perfected, right? Now, in many cases, and I know that property values have dropped 15 to 20% in some places, and yet the banks are still holding that property at that original value in their books.
Well, yeah, and look, it's going to come. The semi-trailer is going to hit them. You stand on the highway long enough, in one position, you're going to get hit. Yeah, and many of these banks have been doing that. They've been fortunate enough that they've dodged the cyclists, but the semi-trailers are coming, and it's going to, as you and I discussed in private, one or two are about to put their hand up for about possibly put their hand up for a bailout. But look, Martin, I guess moving forward, I am sure they're already rewriting the policies, and they're already remapping as to, and already re-instructing values as to how to value, where not to go, or they're already putting out policies to the to the senior people there, what mortgages not to take on.
Yeah, well, they already have a list of postcodes where they actually are only prepared to lend to lower loan-to-value ratios, and some of those postcodes, if for some banks, include the Olympic Park precinct. I know that for a fact. I've actually just made some contact today with a couple of lenders to try and get an update, and so far they have told me that there's no change on the policy before Christmas, so they haven't yet reacted specifically to the Opal Tower situation. But my point is that there is enough news and noise now around this whole area that a prudent lender, I think, should be taking preemptive steps to be able to, begin to think about the implications of valuations being significantly lower than the ones they've actually got on their books. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. I find that what they got back to you on with, and they said that they were that they haven't updated the pre-Christmas policies and so forth. Well, admittedly, though, there haven't been. I'm sure there won't be any settlements, or haven't been any settlements, or very few settlements have been there that have been except that have been exchanged or approved prior to that. But I'm sure that the policy writers have been working 24/7 to get the new policies out, and I can assure you that in the next week or so, they're going to have to come out. They may already come out, and they may be, private and confidential with amongst their own. But that will trickle out. And I dare say in the next week or two, we'll get those reports where, as I said before, I'd be surprised. I would absolutely be gobsmacked if at least one of the majors call that area a no-go zone altogether.
Yeah, we'll be watching for that. Okay, so I guess the final question then is just a quick pulse check. Your current view on where prices are going. You've always said further falls. You're still in that vein, I suspect. What about the rate of fall? Do you think it's accelerating?
The last November, December, we saw a huge acceleration. We're almost up to almost to 0.5% in 10 days. And admittedly, these January would be a slow drive, because we're getting the settlements or the settlement figures from December. As you know, those numbers, those core logic numbers, are somewhat delayed, anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks to in some cases even 75 days. So what we will see is, I still believe that we will see a further acceleration and an increase. This January, we may fall within the 1.1 to 1.2%. So it's going to be lower than November, December, but again, it's because there's a delay in the actual numbers coming through, and it's we're taking into consideration the slowest period in any calendar year. But then February, March is going to be interesting. But as I said earlier on when we started our discussion today, and that is that although there's close to close to 15-16% less properties on the market, because people have taken the properties off for whatever reason. There's been very little activity as well. So there hasn't been an increase in buyers. If anything, our evidence would show that there's been even less buyers as well, which is so. And again, you've got the domain reports, the mainstream media reports of Rental prices still falling. So again, Martin, it's this whole thing that I keep on going on about, and that is we've got enough supply for the next 5 years if we stop building now.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was approached by 60 Minutes yesterday to do another program with them on home price movements. I said, yes, I'm happy to do it. But I said, you've got to understand, I still think there's a long way to go. So they are on notice that if they actually do choose to work with me again, I'm going to be saying the same sort of stuff.
Oh, well, that's it. We're going to look. The thing is with yourself, Martin. One of the things that I've admired about you is that you've got no hidden agenda, unlike many other analysts and economists out there. Once you're on the, whether the barracking for red door, blue door, or selling all sorts of different products out there, you're straightforward, and we share numbers. Just trying to give an honest overview. There's no hidden agenda there, so we're telling it the way we see it.
Yeah, well, exactly right. So it's based on modelling, it's based on data, it's based on analytics. But, I take no great pleasure in tracking the numbers down or indeed up. I just call it as it is. But you're right, I have no agenda at all. And it's interesting how, people accuse me of being, quote, a property bear, unquote. Well, that's interesting now that there are more people coming in my direction in terms of the numbers, right? But, if things do change and we start seeing prices go up again, I will certainly report that and willingly. So I just deal with the data as it comes in. So, there's absolutely no hidden agenda at all here at all.
And that's the great thing about our discussions, and that's why I like talking to you, and that's why it's we get our critics. They're going to come and go, but you know what? They're going to get caught out as well. And whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Twitter, or wherever. Yeah.
Well, and look, the international context is also quite interesting, right? Because the World Bank came out this week and said that global growth is coming off. We're seeing home prices slide now in a number of other places, including in Canada, including some parts of the US, including some parts of the UK. So we seem to be now in a global environment where growth is slowing, where home prices are slowing. And so, people perhaps get a bit fixated on the local market here, but there is an international context. And that's another reason why I tend to be thinking on the downside rather than the upside, because I think some of that's going to hit us as well. So,
yeah, look, you've heard of Jesse Colombo, and I think you may have, you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
And when I linked up with him on Twitter about 6-7 years ago, I learned a lot from that young man, and because he was just reporting numbers as they were happening and reporting trends, and that is when 7-8 years ago was when I realised, hey, hold on a minute. Although I'm acting as just a real estate agent here in Sydney, Australia, based in Parramatta, I've got to look at this whole thing globally, because whatever happens in China, whatever happens in America, whatever happens in Europe is going to have some sort of impact. It's going to trickle down and have an effect, whether it be minuscule, micro or macro here in Sydney. So that's when I started educating myself and evolving, and that's when I started looking more and more into, as you said, the trends. But hey, look, we've been you could say we've been prophets in the desert for many years, and it is what it is, and hopefully soon I'll get you the "I Told You So" T-shirt as well. That I just
yeah, perhaps we should start selling it on the DFA site. Right?
Well, I told you so. I mean, again, the cookie man met up with him, and he gave me an "I Told You So" T-shirt. I just laughed and he said, "Can you wear it next time you and Martin show?" I said, "I've got to ask him permission first."
Well, yeah, do it next time. Edwin, I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much for that. And we will be in touch again and continue to monitor this rather interesting environment that we're in. Appreciate your time.
As always, thank you very much, Martin. A pleasure.
Thanks, Edwin.